What if the connection between a baby and the person holding them is not just emotional in the poetic sense, not just love, not just warmth, not just the feeling of being close, but is, in the most literal and measurable neurological sense, a shared state, a genuine merging of two nervous systems into something that functions temporarily as one, where the boundary between what you feel and what the baby feels becomes, at the level of the body's chemistry and the brain's electrical activity, genuinely and scientifically blurry. And what if this sharing of emotional states is not a side effect of proximity or a consequence of sensitivity, but is the central feature of what is happening between a caregiver and a baby from the very first moments of life, the primary biological channel through which the baby learns what emotions are, what they feel like, what they mean, and how the world responds to them. A channel so fundamental and so deeply wired that without it, the human nervous system cannot develop the way it needs to, cannot build the regulatory circuits that will allow this person to manage their own emotions for the rest of their life, cannot acquire the social and emotional intelligence that is, in every measurable sense, the most important intelligence a human being ever develops. The reason babies feel your emotions is not that they are sensitive in some vague or mystical way. It is that they were built to feel your emotions, were built with the specific biological machinery to receive and absorb and be physiologically changed by the emotional states of the people who care for them. Because feeling your emotions is how they learn to feel at all. And learning to feel, learning what emotions are and what they do and how they move through a body and how they can be survived, is the most foundational learning a human being ever does. The biological machinery at the center of this story is one we have visited before in this series, but its role in the specific experience of emotional sharing between caregivers and babies deserves its own careful attention. The mirror neuron system, that extraordinary network of cells distributed across multiple regions of the brain that fire both when we perform an action or experience an emotion and when we observe another person performing that action or expressing that emotion, creating at the neural level a simulation of the other person's state inside our own nervous system. A simulation so real and so physiologically complete that it changes our heart rate, our cortisol levels, our muscle tension, our breathing pattern, our skin conductance, all in the direction of the state we are observing, all without conscious intention, and all before the cognitive processing that would allow us to name or explain what we are picking up has even begun to run. In adults, this simulation is moderated by layers of cognitive and social processing. We feel what someone else is feeling, but we do not become it. We can hold the simulation at arm's length. We can choose the degree to which we allow the other person's state to move us. We can maintain our regulatory capacity alongside the emotional resonance and use that capacity to respond helpfully rather than being swept away. And this moderation is what we call empathy in its healthy adult form, the capacity to feel with another person while remaining enough of a separate self to be useful to them. Babies have the mirror system, but not the moderation. The simulation runs at full intensity, without cognitive buffering, without the regulatory overlay that would allow them to receive another person's emotional state and hold it at a considered distance, which means that when a caregiver is experiencing a strong emotion, the baby is not observing that emotion from outside. They are running the full physiological simulation of it from inside, their heart rate and cortisol and muscle tension and breathing all moving toward the pattern of the emotion they are mirroring, their whole body recruited into the experience of something that originated in someone else's nervous system and has now, through the mirror system's automatic and irresistible operation, become also their own. This is why the distinction between what you feel and what the baby feels, in the context of close physical proximity and caregiving interaction, is far less clear than it intuitively seems, because the emotional state you are in is not staying in you. it is broadcasting outward through every channel your body uses to express its internal state. Your voice, your face, your touch, your posture, your breathing, the specific quality of your muscle tension in the arms that hold the baby, the rhythm and the pace of the movement with which you carry them. And the baby's nervous system is receiving all of those channels simultaneously and running the physiological simulation of what they collectively indicate, not as a guess or an inference, but as a direct neurological event, as the actual electrochemical firing of the circuits that represent that emotional state in the baby's own brain, in the baby's own body. The researchers who have most deeply studied the moment-to-moment physiological synchrony between caregivers and babies, measuring heart rate and cortisol, and skin conductance and brainwave patterns simultaneously in both members of the pair, have found levels of physiological coupling that are, by the standards of what we typically observe between adult humans, remarkable. The baby's autonomic nervous system rhythms entrain to the caregivers. The emotional arousal cycles of the two nervous systems begin to move in parallel. The biological markers of stress or calm in one body predict the biological markers of stress or calm in the other, with a consistency that, when you see it graphed over time, looks less like two separate people and more like a single system with two nodes, a regulatory partnership in which the caregiver's nervous system is functioning not just as a separate biological entity in the room, but as an external component of the baby's own regulatory architecture. Now here is the first twist that reframes what emotional sharing between caregiver and baby actually is and what it is for. The experience of feeling another person's emotions that the baby undergoes through this physiological synchrony is not a passive reception of the caregiver's internal weather. It is an active learning process, the most fundamental emotional learning process that exists, in which the baby is using the caregiver's emotional states and the caregiver's responses to those states as the primary curriculum for learning what emotions are, how they work, and most critically, whether and how they can be regulated. Every time the baby moves into a state of distress and the caregiver responds with soothing, with the specific voice and touch and movement that brings the baby's arousal down from its peak, the baby is not just experiencing comfort, they are learning, at the most basic neural level, the association between distress and resolution, between emotional storm and the possibility of returning to calm, between the flooded, overwhelming state of being dysregulated and the specific sensory experience of being brought back to equilibrium by the action of another person. And this learning, repeated across thousands of such cycles in the first years of life, builds in the baby's brain the expectation that emotions can be survived, that distress has an endpoint, that the overwhelming feeling will pass, that there exists a path from dysregulation back to calm. And this expectation, built from the accumulated evidence of thousands of soothed moments, is the neural foundation of what will eventually become the baby's capacity for self-regulation, their ability to manage their own emotional states in the absence of an external regulator, the internal resource that adults draw on when they are upset and need to find their way back to equilibrium by themselves. Here is the second twist, and it is one that tends to land with particular force because of how personal and how universal its implications are. The learning that happens through emotional sharing in the early relationship is not just learning about what emotions feel like. It is learning about what emotions mean, about whether emotions are things that are acceptable to have, whether they are things that will be acknowledged or dismissed, whether expressing them produces connection or withdrawal, whether the big feelings that arise in a small body are things that the world can hold or things that are too much, too messy, too loud, too inconvenient to be met with patience and presence. And this learning, encoded at the deepest level of the implicit memory system before the child has any words for what they are learning, forms the foundational layer of what psychologists call emotional intelligence, which is not the ability to name emotions from a feelings chart, but the much deeper, much more lived capacity to be in your own emotional experience without being destroyed by it, to express your feelings in ways that allow for connection rather than producing shame, to trust that the people who love you can handle the full reality of what you feel, and to know, at a level below language and below conscious belief, that your emotional life is something that belongs to you and deserves to be treated with care. The baby whose emotional expressions are consistently met with warmth and attunement, whose joy is reflected back, whose distress is soothed, whose curiosity is joined, whose anger is acknowledged without matching or dismissing, learns something about emotions that cannot be taught in any classroom or conveyed in any book. They learn that feelings are survivable, that they matter, that expressing them is safe, that the emotional self is a welcome guest in the relationship rather than a problem to be managed. And this learning becomes the invisible infrastructure of a life lived from the inside out, a life in which the person knows how to feel and is not afraid of what they find when they do. What all of this comes down to, when you step back and see the full picture, is something both beautifully simple and profoundly important. Babies feel your emotions because they are in the process of learning how to feel, and you are the teacher, not through any deliberate instruction, not through anything you plan or decide or consciously demonstrate, but through the simple, continuous, irreducibly human fact of being a person in the presence of another person who is just beginning to understand what it means to be a person, and whose nervous system is using everything your nervous system broadcasts, every flicker of your mood, every quality of your touch, every warmth or tension in your voice, every moment of presence or distraction, as the raw material from which the architecture of emotional life is being built. And the implication of this that matters most is not that you must be emotionally perfect, or that your bad days are damaging, or that every moment of anxiety you carry into the room is a wound. The implication that matters most is that the relationship itself is the teacher, that the pattern across thousands of moments is what shapes the baby's emotional understanding, and that the pattern does not need to be perfect to be good enough. It does not need to be without difficulty to build something solid. It needs only to be real and responsive, to contain more warmth than cold, more meeting than missing, more moments of repair than moments of rupture left unhealed. And if it is that, if you are that, then what the baby is learning through the experience of feeling your emotions is one of the most important and one of the most lasting things a human being can learn, which is that love is not an absence of difficulty, but a willingness to return to each other through that feeling. Things together is how people become close, and that the emotions that move between two people who care for each other are not a disturbance in the relationship, but its very substance, the living, breathing, constantly renewed evidence that what is happening between them is real. Subscribe for more Mind Secrets.